What's the difference between promoting and selling energy efficiency? It might be the difference between a lot of talk and a little action, at least to San Francisco-based energy efficiency expert coming to Hawaii next week. Mark Jewell will run a series of workshops for electrical contractors, architects, and engineers, and vendors responsible for pursuing expense-reducing capital projects. The sessions are sponsored by the ratepayer-funded conservation program, Hawaii Energy. You've probably gotten a report card on your energy consumption from them. Their logo is that little outlet that looks like a smiley face. You probably know the one. But in advance of Mark Jewell's trip, we've got him on the phone with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Beth Ann.
We have heard a lot for many, many years in Hawaii about why we need to conserve, why we need to change our energy portfolio. We've had just legions of people tell us that, and certainly you're no stranger to what we face over here. How do you make the argument to the people who are involved in creating newer buildings or retrofitting the ones that we have, that some of this needs to be built in right now in ways that perhaps we haven't really discussed?
Essentially, that's an interesting question. I think one of the problems with the way energy efficiency has been, you mentioned in your introduction, promoted in the past, is that it's been promoted as a greater good, that you should do it because it's good for the environment, it's good for part of Hawaii's clean energy initiative, etc. When you actually widen the aperture and start looking at a panoramic view of why people should be embracing energy efficiency in new construction, which is your example, it really becomes obvious. But you have to actually widen the aperture and start looking at why people put their pants and dresses on in the morning and go to work in commercial real estate, for example. They're looking to increase net operating income. And framing an argument around energy efficiency that is focused on net operating income is much more effective than saying, you should build a building with a lighter carbon footprint.
So you're saying it all comes down to our wallets or bank accounts after all?
Interestingly enough, I'm not sure it's necessarily the wallets or bank accounts, but I do think that things have to be reframed so that the benefits resonate with yardsticks that the prospects are already using to measure their own success. So in the case of commercial real estate that I just gave you, it happens to be net operating income and asset value. It could just as easily be tenant attraction and retention. For a community hospital, it might be civic leadership. Certainly for a government, it would be corporate, good governance. But whatever, you can't be talking about kilowatts, kilowatt hours, and therms and metric tons of CO2 emissions avoided, because those are metrics that do not resonate with most decision makers in the economy.
But what you just said, though, Mark, seems to take us right back into that common good conversation.
Well, it's actually very self-interested. I mean, if you talk to, maybe I should give you a chapter from my past. I was responsible for helping the Environmental Protection Agency roll out the Energy Star Portfolio Manager benchmarking tool back in the late 90s. And in fact, to humor stories, I was the person on the phone saying, hello, this is Mark Jewell calling on behalf of the White House. May I speak to your general manager, please? Recruiting the Sears Tower, the Transamerica Pyramid, the Empire State Building, and a variety of other landmark buildings into a charter ribbon-cutting ceremony in Times Square on Earth Day to announce this new energy performance benchmarking. I can guarantee you that the reason that the general managers of those buildings signed on the dotted line and showed up for that ribbon-cutting ceremony was not necessarily the public good. It was not necessarily economic development for their buildings. It was everything. It was all the above. It was putting a good face on their business and being seen as a leader in commercial real estate.
Which seems to say, Mark, that there's nothing wrong with enlightened self-interest.
Exactly. And one of the things we teach in our sales courses is exactly that. Understand, put some light yourself on the segment-specific and role-specific self-interests of the prospects that you're talking with, and make sure that your message resonates with those self-interests. It can't just be about drowning polar bears in the Arctic. I actually had a prospect tell me once, polar bears aren't drowning. I was just at SeaWorld, and I saw one of them swimming with a beach ball. He looked quite happy.
Well, there are a lot of people who are not terribly happy about what they see every month when they get their utility bills, particularly for businesses. Certainly, we've seen ours escalate here with Hawaii Public Radio over time for lots of different reasons, but it's affecting everyone. So knowing that it's really hitting us hard in Hawaii, how do you make the case any differently than what people have heard before, particularly when you're talking to those electrical contractors and architects and engineers?
We take a very different approach to selling efficiency. We tell people that for the most part, most people in this energy efficiency business have never had professional sales training. They've had a lot of industry product knowledge training, but the average salesperson in the industry, across all industries, has had maybe 3 days or less of professional sales training. So the first thing we do is we say, you know what, let's start with the basics. If you don't have a 15-second elevator pitch that is specifically sharpened for that person that you're going to be speaking with, you're not going to capture their attention. The second thing we tell people is that you need to have a very crisp, one-page narrative proposal that hits specifically what you think that prospect is going to be most concerned about. In there, recalibrate it to the metrics that mean things to them. And then the third thing that we do very differently is we say you need a one-page financial analysis and something that migrates the discussion from simple payback period, how long is it going to take me to get my money back if I do what you want me to do, to, wow, for every dollar I invest in this thing that you're asking me to invest in, I'm going to get $4.52 back over the lifetime of this investment. So those three tools, the elevator pitch, the one-page proposal, one-page financial summary, all informed by segment-specific metrics, it makes it a totally different message.
That's a message, though, that you could take across the country and you tweak it a little bit for where you were. But given Hawaii and some of the things that we face here, how are you tweaking that message for Hawaii folks?
Well, one of the things I've noticed, and I've been privileged to be invited by Hawaii Energy to speak for the last 3 years, and we've already graduated over 500 people from our courses, is that I find that as high as electricity prices are in Hawaii, there is a tendency toward Martin Seligman, the professor at the University of Pennsylvania, wrote a book called Learned Optimism. He also had this phrase called learned helplessness. And I think people are complacent in some regards by saying, wow, my electricity has been 10% of my after-tax income ever since I was a child. So that's just one of those things like death and taxes. And the fact of the matter is it doesn't have to be. And so a lot of what we do is shake the complacency, saying energy is not a fixed cost. You can control it. And, for example, one of the courses we're teaching next week live at the DoubleTree down in Waikiki is benchmarking your commercial building and what to do next. And benchmarking, you can't manage what you don't measure, so just allowing people to say, wow, my building is 20% below average in efficiency. No wonder my bill is so high.
Now, there are a lot of homeowners who have also been getting this report card from Hawaii Energy, which is making somewhat that same point, but the idea of looking at what you could do and, as you say, try to shake the complacency out of us and realize that just because it's always been that way, maybe 10% of your after-tax income, it doesn't always have to be that way, but you do have to make some changes.
Absolutely. And the other thing I think, Beth Ann, is underscoring the fact that if you were to make the changes, we're not doing it just to decrease your utility bill. You're doing it to increase your productivity. You're doing it to decrease your scrap rate. We even had a case study of a dairy farmer putting LED, state-of-the-art lighting in his milking barns. And in addition to getting the energy savings from the electric bill reduction, he noticed that the cows were producing 6% more milk. Who knew that the cows never liked the fluorescent lights that were there? But if he added in the payback of the milk, it turns out that he was getting his money back from the lighting retrofit in 3 months instead of 4 years. And now you've got dairy farmers across the country doing similar retrofits of their agricultural milking barns. In fact, someone in Hawaii, one of our past students, told me that he related that case study to one of his prospects, and he got a big deal out of it.
Well, a lot of two-leggeds don't like all that fluorescent lighting either, but that's a whole other story. All right, Mark. Well, we wish you a safe journey over to Hawaii, and you'll be here next week. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
Mark Jewell is a co-founder of the Energy Sales Professional Institute in San Francisco. Early in his career, he helped the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency create and implement the Energy Star Buildings program for commercial real estate.